All right, so we've got a Bakugo 4 list here, and this is standard, correct? This is new
Yes, yeah,
standard, or
new
tournament
standard.
standard, I guess. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
weird. It's like standard for so long was like the extended sort of semi legacy format, and now
yeah,
standard's like the new thing, right? So,
yeah.
um, okay. So we've got Bakugo here, and you said the numbers, of course, aren't real. So I assume what we're mostly going to be focused on here is chiseling this down to a more comprehensive deck size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just trying to get, like I said, just talk through it. I kind of added what's in there, but I kind of want to narrow the focus. So it's primarily, of course, you see with the cards that I'm playing, I primarily want to focus on the discard. Kind of like how we chatted before with Hiei. Um, this is the other character that I was looking at doing this with too. However, I do want to play the 7 or 8 two checks because I just think that's what kind of makes it roll. But I do want I want like a sub theme of like foundation destruction
Okay.
or kind of like manipulating the stage just a little bit. So like maybe a little bit of stun or like some foundation destruction. Because while the discard is good, granted, there's been a ton of new card advantage that's been printed with UU, and then there's just going to be some other characters. So it can't be like I just can't be like super gas on the disc. And then if somebody just has card advantage over me, it just kind of gets rolled over. So,
Right, and
um,
there are some really powerful incidental effects that are strong against discard. It's just they don't come up very often. So you
yeah,
attempt to play a discard deck, right? The amount of cards that they're printing that have effects that include the discard in the effect are getting a little more prevalent. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea. And of course, if your opponent has no cards in hand, where else are they going to play defense from, right? Their stage.
yep,
And you know, every deck that has been relevant, you know, even the fastest, most streamlined deck we've seen be successful at the HLC 2023, Nicholas Reagan's Endeavor deck still played Electric. That's
yep,
how
yeah,
ubiquitous stage control is in his draw a bunch of cards kick deck. We played Electric. Definitely, I think
yeah,
you're
and
on
that,
the right path.
yeah, and that's also what I wanted to work with too, because Death also with this set got a ton of draw power too. Um, because especially like I got Genkai's guidance, that's going to require that I discard a card out of hand too in order to make that rival discard. But if I can somehow, flip it around and still be able to make up that resource, I can still either say net or positive
Right.
on there. Bakugo 4 I also had that's high on my list. I say him and Hiei is probably who I'll rock the majority of the competitive time. But if we are going to get into the damage reduction mess, in addition to my own deck being able to pump it, my rival could pump it for free too.
And,
Since the response is every time it's a penalty, not once per turn or once per enhance.
yeah, I think a huge part of what makes it so powerful is the fact that you can stack a bunch of the triggers, right? The rabble
Hmm.
rousing, the four of seems like one of the biggest staples I think for this deck
Yeah.
because that response is very handy defensively. I mean, you know, -1 doesn't sound like a lot, but it can very much be the difference between turn two exact lethal that we see so very often in our earlier formats. I think I was corrected. I was telling everyone I didn't see a turn two all weekend at the HLC, and that's true. While we were on lunch break, though, we did have it happen twice to Jose Narono. So so I have to apologize to that. He got really upset at me because I kept spreading misinformation. It did happen on stream. I wasn't there for it. So I think with the damage stat pumps that are coming in Yu Yu Hakusho, I think for the earliest formats, really gotta be you really gotta be afraid of these characters that scale up with the ephemeral resources. Brute strength is
Yeah.
gone, but there's so many better brute strengths or like more impactful, and you're playing a lot of them. Right? God, Red Ride Seculus is very similar. Its ability to give you damage for an already committed resource because it's playable while committed. Um, and then you've got the play of power, which I really like. This one is pretty experimental. I think if you're gonna go like a destruction route, it is a little bit of a non-bow, and you can be in these scrappy like back and forth six-hander games where both of you built like three or four, and you're just kind of slugging it out because you both have really aggressive, angry hands. You know, the ability to destroy one foundation at will is going to be pretty strong. I think a lot of people are looking at the I think it's the Karasu Foundation where it's like destroy for +1 damage and you can respond to gain a life. That one I expect to see all over the place. I don't know if they're going to make, top cuts in any early tournaments, but I know people are going to be trying to do that. So I think it's a really good rate though for a one diff. I think you can afford it in the deck. So give me a rundown on, we talk about like the concept for the deck. Give me like the elevator pitch, I guess you could say. What is this deck trying to do on its best?
Okay, so on its best day, I would like to be able to be aggressive with the discard, primarily to have the card advantage, just be able to pump every attack for damage. So regardless of how fast or slow it is, it's going to encourage blocking, which would essentially create more of a hand disadvantage. And then I also have it to want to be able to scale as well too, because I'm not going to be able to have early kill turns. I just need to be able to find that time when I have that late string, or like I said, the game goes a little bit longer when both of our stages are fully developed. I can still have that scaling damage if games go late.
Okay. So you want to have let's translate some of it to game terms, right? Let's take, you said you want to be aggressive early. What are the benefits you get from being aggressive early, and especially with a discard with such easy access, I should say, having consistent discard on a character's face is something that you don't see super often. And Bakugo has like this crazy upside of also clearing his card pool to make early build turns a bit smoother. So you really do get rewarded for being a little extra aggressive. He kind of encourages playing at least 2 attacks a turn. And so once you get that discard plan going, you can prevent your opponent from sculpting, right? So you can prevent these really defensive decks from getting the kind of hands that they want, being able to hold on to attacks. If you can make an eraser head in the previous metas, discard their whole hand every single turn, it usually bought you a turn or two from that point. So I love the idea of being aggressive early. Which of the cards are going to really help us on a turn 2, not committed to winning the game, but committed to making our rival use up 2 or 3 cards? What are like the best cards you want to see on a turn 2?
Villainous Waylay, definitely at the top. Then Explosive Rebuke is tough early because if I don't have a good build, it's that playing it on a 6 in order to get the full effect of it. And I don't know. I really do like Full Cowling Impact as an opener. Just because at least my experience playing Bakugo 4, people, know with the discard. So they kind of hold 3, sometimes 4. So just making that an 8 damage without even me pumping anything else. Then you having to have the low block. If you do, you lose the foundation. If you don't, you're still taking like 5 damage on a half, and I still got a card out of hand. And then
how okay are you with Full Cowling being a too low for 4 though? Because there is the characters, and I assume that this is something you're gonna want to be playing at like a Wish tournament style format, right? Like early Yu Hakusho format. Yeah. So how often do you think you're going to be playing against a younger Toguro style character, or maybe like a Chu or something like that, where Chu's hand size is all over the place and he's got a lot of health? Kuwabara can play defense without his hand, and younger Toguros are playing a lot of Always Cool. And so while you'll still get the first response, like one of your damage pumps, but they can actually lock your damage with Always Cool. And having 32 health, I don't know if you watch some of my streams, like just early super rough drafts, I'm not blocking anything and just relying on surviving one more turn, because that's going to force my opponent to not be as aggressive, right? Because they know they'll have to block him.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and that's why I have it like as a two of, because I did think about that too. If I don't get to pop anything off or pump it, um, it's just 4 damage. So, I also had an issue because I did want at least one low threat in the attack lineup, but low attacks on Fury are
it used to be
rough.
good.
Yeah, as I said, it used to be good, but I just had a rough time looking to find like a 4 diff, low zone threat. Yes.
Okay. Um,
Give me like just a minute or two here, Sam. Hold on.
absolutely. While he's taking care of business, yeah, what do you guys think about the attack lineup? I think it's pretty solid. I think I would shift some focus around. Um, but I think it's pretty solid. I'm a huge fan of Stun Grenade. It's hard to go wrong with Vile Season, right? I mean, this is just one of the breaker ones of all time. I think we are missing a little bit of card draw though. I like Finger Daggers. Finger Daggers doesn't let us draw. What it does is it encourages blocking. And he talked about that. He talked about I want to encourage people to block. It's got a big damage number. It's not going to be super hard to block. So you're going to be when this comes in, with your +3 mid block, your opponent -1 surviving, whatever they have to just put a little minus speed on it to reliably block early, especially against a deck like this. They're going to be so down to do that. And so while it's not good that they're blocking your 8-9 move, being able to game plan around that is pretty important. I think we need a little more reliable draw though. I'm not sure how much having a low threat is going to be important. I've seen people more often than not be willing to play out their hand rather than be forced to block. If that makes sense. They would rather hope that you just don't have it and get more resources for later, especially early. And it's been pretty effective. So the main things I'm not seeing is the attacks aren't pumping themselves. So we're really reliant on rabble rousing. Activate our character. We've got the 0 div.
All right, I am back.
Okay.
I can't remember where we left off at.
We were discussing early game aggression and the benefits of it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to go ahead.
I was just saying, I also was wanting to look. I have several card options and foundations and assets for card draw. But outside of like, I don't know, finger daggers and Vile Season, like essentially almost do the same thing. So Vile Season, it could somewhat be an accidental stun too, or if they fail it, it's a 3 high 6 or draw a card. Finger daggers is a 3 mid 6, but if it deals damage, you get to draw. But there's like, I don't know, of course they're, low speed. And it's not like, on the evil symbol, there's, burn combo where if I can get to do something, it pumps it and itself. So,
Okay, I know you've had to have looked at it because it's his own attack. But Irate Scowl, right? It's too low for 5. I've had very mixed feelings about this one myself. When you look at it, it seems like it's rough hoops. It seems like a lot of restrictions for both enhances to go right, which it kind of dictates how you play this card, true. Which is not great. But if we're looking at it fortuitously, we're looking at the upside of it is we have, if a card is left your card pool, it gets 3 speed -1 damage. So it effectively becomes a 5 low for 7, which is very good for a 4 div. And then if your rival has 2 or less cards in their hand, which if you played a waylay, if you explicitly played a waylay and called the correct zone and have the Bakugo enhanced, there's a very good chance at this. And I think that
Yeah,
this is.
as I know, when I played this card, it primarily gets played on a 6, as when I've been able to like pop off both. The top enhance, if the card's left your card pool, that's usually I can play that play this card as like the second attack in the turn and
Right.
pop that off. But that bottom enhance for that card draw, that typically doesn't happen until the third or like the fourth attack in the string. I also want to bring up too, majority of the obviously not with the UU cards. But the variation of this deck I have played with what I've had as far as for like being able to have the next check gets plus. I can very regularly, if I draw the gas, play like 4 or 5 attacks. And of course, if I typically check well, only commit like maybe 3 or 4 foundations.
Right.
So it's very I don't know, the way the lineup is it strings well, if I can get that, if I pull the right amount of cards in hand.
Okay.
There's also the other, what was is it 60% power for Toguro, younger Toguro's card that draws 4 diff? I don't think it's a Fury though, is it?
It's not a Fury. The only one from Yu Yu Hakusho, they printed 3 though, but the only one that is a Fury is Finger Daggers. But I'm curious how important the damage response is, and I mean that because I'm looking at the foundation base, and besides Irritated, which only works on a Fury attack anyways, and I thought there was one more.
Are you talking about for minus damage? It'd be a Reluctant Role Model.
Yeah, and Beneath the Armor is once per turn. Oh no, that actually counts out to being less damage. You wouldn't do that on your own.
No, I wouldn't. It's like tight-lipped essentially.
Yeah.
For what the damage gain I would get from it if I use that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we actually have space for one, I guess you could call it a tech piece, but one consistency card. If we play a card like Mop Strike. So Mop Strike is super interesting in a character that can force discard, because traditionally you would always have to do the discard. Your rival discards a random card, both players draw a card, and 99% of the time I think you're going to want to do that anyways as Bakugo 4. But on top of that, you can force them to discard and just only do, like, if you know what's in their hand, if you've got a good read, right? They haven't been blocking high attacks, or whatever zone you're going to be throwing for game. You can play this as just a 4 diff, my second attack, you discard a card, I draw a card. We call it there. And it does have Desperation 3, which I think is going to matter a lot for certain matchups where you're going back and forth with 6-handers, using your life total as a resource, having this be a kind of a middle string option after you've done your once per turn, after you've done your explosive rebukes. This can come in, especially while playing this many 2-checks. We're definitely going to need to have some ability to recover from bad checks, especially if we want to have that early aggression, because that's when checking a 2 is the most scary. So the other thing about something like Mop Strike that's kind of important is if you have effects that are powerful that rely on your opponent having discarded a card, which I'm on the stream right now, I'm looking at Aerial Recon. I think Aerial Recon is super good for this kind of deck. I think it's a big reason to play a discard deck right now, because while it is a 2/4, we basically the fair stats for a ready a card once per turn kind of a thing. not only is it very easy for you to trigger that on both turns just by playing a block, right? But having the crucial response flip to look at the rest of your rival's hand to know if you even need to bother making them discard and draw, or, you know, basically having the read on, can I win this game? That's a very powerful thing to have. So
Yeah. I think I have it in the deck. I do.
So having a card like Mob Strike, your opponent can look at you build multiple aerial recons and decide, well, if I just play out my whole hand and I don't have cards to discard, I can slow my opponent down, because if they make me discard my whole hand with a Waylay into a Bakugo Enhance, which I've seen you make this play, so you know it's a quality play sometimes, right? You do the Waylay and you abort it with Bakugo to discard the last card in their hand so they block with it, and, you know, Breaker you mess with your progressive. So having, you know, access to the aerial recon type stuff coming from playing a Mob Strike, you know, it's not a great opener though. That's really the issue, is because, or no, Bakugo 4 can kick anything, right?
Yeah, he can kick anything. It's just the damage pump is only on Fury attacks, but he can kick anything from the card pool.
Okay, so it's not even that bad of an opener. Sometimes you don't want to let your opponent block. You're just gonna draw a card and move on, right? So it doesn't work with explosive rebuke. So that was the thing. But yeah, I think looking at Mob Strike, it's probably still a hard sell. But I think that there is place for one or two of these. And it's just so consistent. It's such a good, like, poke attack that you don't even care if you deal damage.
Yeah.
No, you get to, especially like on that turn, you know, like you went first turn 2, or maybe like a turn 3 where your opponent is starting to sculpt or only hold good attacks, like making them rip random cards out is pretty powerful. Yeah. I expect to see a lot of Mob Strike decks do really well, just because they're going to see the cards that they want more often than other decks. And because we have Bakugo, because Bakugo 4 can discard it from the card pool, I'm actually much higher on that. I thought we would have to play it later in a turn.
No. Yeah, no, it's just straight up discard one card from your card pool.
And then on top of
that,
it's
on both turns. It's just on my turn, rival discards one too.
Yeah, and then, you know, you've got other ways to pump damage. So Death still has really good just normal damage pump. We talked about how there's not a whole lot of damage reduction effects. There's the zero diff and one other one that really kind of matters, and you get it. Also to point out, because we're talking about strictly damage pumping, his own foundation, Bring It On. This attack gets +1 damage to each card that has left your card pool this turn. This is also kind of open-ended, right? Doesn't have to be a Fury attack. So people are not gonna expect the 8 damage Mob Strike coming out of this deck, making them discard a random card. You know, they're gonna think that they weathered the storm. They have their +1 mid, can block anything, and then, you know, got discard random card.
You know what? I can also do that with Mob Strike to trigger its response. Oh no, it says due to their non-character effect. Would that apply if I was to use Mob Strike?
No, because it's not their effect. Your effect.
Okay. I was gonna say their non-character.
That would be. I think that works in Yu-Gi-Oh though. But yeah, no, that would not work to trigger that. But this is still This is still a card that I think is worth playing more of if you're playing Explosive Rebuke, which I think this is a 4 of for this character. It's just your whole character ability again.
Yeah.
And we've got one of the best combos with it, because you talked about wanting to touch the rival stage. Yeah. Right? We've also got Frightening Calm, which can add stun. There too. Yeah, so I think what we're gonna do, I think we need to kind of focus and rein it in. I think we need to look at cards that increase our consistency as a six-hander, we have to have card flow. You cannot play the game fairly. You cannot look at the 6 cards that you draw and hope to keep up with any character that draws on their own face. Especially since you can't make them discard a card during their turn with your character, right? It's pretty tough to make people discard on their own turn. So we have to keep pace with what they're doing. And then every 7-hander is going to have, access to the same amount of card draw that 6-handers do, plus have that extra card every turn. So I think pressuring the board with an overload of stun is going to be more accessible than trying to destroy pieces. And as a 6-hander, going destroy for destroy is going to be super tough if you're not a character like younger Toguro who ramps. So if you're going to find yourself against these younger Toguro decks, I mean, not for like the Wish tournament, but after that in the first regionals, I mean, Overhaul's probably not going anywhere. Overhaul got a lot of really cool tricks, actually. Character that's probably only going to get sweeter as time goes on. So you're going to need like ways to keep up with extra resources that they get, because if you're trading 1 for 1 but they're building an additional, obviously that math, it doesn't help you. So I think if we focus on cards like Explosive Rebuke, Snack Time, and Frightening Calm as like our ways to open up and wall break, we can max those out, feel pretty good about it. The Snack Time is also, you talked about scaling. Snack Time, one of the best scaling cards of all time. I'm not joking. I fully expect there to be younger Toguro players who are like 100% all in on waiting till you go into deadlock because of their effect, forcing you into deadlock, and just activating every funny punch and every Snack Time, flipping their whole stage. I've done it myself. It's so effective. It's actually so effective. It's, when you can fuel Snack Time with itself, it really does feel like One with Nature all over again. Because those are cards that don't matter.
And then it also could set up the that Explosive Rebuke turn if I have Frightening Calm and then Snack Time and then flip it and stun 6 for 1 turn. I mean, off of 1 card.
Yeah, I mean, the average time that you are going to play Explosive Rebuke, you're going to commit 1 anyways, right? So you discard 1 to Snack Time, you destroy 1 to Frightening Calm, and now has on it 3 instances of stun 1, becomes stun 6 with,
with the flip.
It's a little awkward and it is going to tax your stage, but it's such a good, I mean, at a late game stage where you need stun 6 to even like attempt to attack your opponent to deal damage, those aren't going to matter. You're going to have stuff to flip. But
let's see here. I'm trying to think here. So scale back first though real quick. The Mop Strike. So I just dropped the full Cowling Impact, and then how many Mop Strikes to play?
I would think 2 to 3 Mop Strikes is fine for right now, because we are still trying to trim this down, right? We're at 66 and we're about to add a bunch of cards to focus in on what we want, but then we have to scale it back as well, right? But like, for example, outside of a turn 2 poke, I don't think your Irritated are going to be long for this world. They're probably going to get flipped, destroyed for maximum value.
Yeah, and that was kind of the plan with having it too. I could flip it to trigger on demand and then destroy them for Frightening Calm or for interdimensional plants or something along the lines of that. So
yeah, interdimensional plants is very interesting.
It is worked out amazing. And the one I'm playing here with the pre-rotation, like I said, primarily just for the draw, but then also get to draw and get +1 to the next check. And then again, I don't have a ton of momentum outs in this deck, so just being able to discard for +3 damage and gain a health on my 30 health character lets me sculpt a little bit better, because then I can just face tank a little bit more if I really need to like hold for a next turn.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot, actually. The diff asset with 8 2-checks does scare me though. I do have to be honest.
There is. I have to check. I think originally I was going to run like 16 zeros just because I think it was the reluctant role model, the syndicate target, the pilot's negotiations, and I think I thought about adding Botan's coaching after it got revealed, but I wasn't 100% sure, or surviving the final, one of those two.
Yeah. It's a real
just
shame.
to kind of smooth it out, because I really want to run 4x of explosive dagger, but that puts me at 8 2-checks for the deck.
Yeah. It is a real shame that don't have Bat Strike on this. I think Bat Strike is a reason to play Botan's coaching. And I think as a Fury, it definitely has a home as at least a 1 or 2 of. Your rival loses X health. X equals the number of cards they discarded this turn. That racks up pretty quick when you're playing cards like Mop Strike. And it racks up pretty quickly when your opponent is trying to compensate for your discard. And if they don't do adequately and you talked about wanting a low zone threat. Bat Strike fits all of that criteria. Granted, it's one of the worst turn 2 pokes. It doesn't fulfill like a versatile role, but a +1 low block, low zone attack, late game scaling, kind of option. Gives you a reason.
And have Fury.
Yeah, and it has Fury and gives you a reason to run, more consistency pieces. I think Bat Strike makes it.
Yeah.
Tough to figure out where.
Yeah.
But I think Bat Strike might. 2 Bat Strikes, I think, takes the full Cowling slot. But I'm starting to lose faith in Finger Deck, which is rough.
I'm looking at the same too. If we do with a Mop Strike, like I said, that card wasn't even on my radar per se.
Yeah. Yeah, the Botan stuff was real recent.
Yeah, but it definitely feels. I like it for the flexibility, like we said per se. I can just say, okay, I've done my Bakugo once per turn or an attack. I get to draw a card. I don't necessarily have to do the top unless I have something to combo with.
Yeah,
Finger Daggers. I have to deal damage in order to get the draw one, as opposed to play my character, draw one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where if you sense the weakness in your opponent, you get the rabble rousing. Play a Bat Strike, you discard 1 with Bakugo. They burn 2 from rabble rousing. Bat Strike is for 7, right? There's for 6, and then it burns an additional 1 for 7. Like that's not bad rate. It's just not fast attack.
Yeah.
But now that we've seen the potential power of cards like Snack Time and Frightening Calm, I feel a lot better about your ability to win games regardless of stripping your opponent completely out of options. But you can absolutely just win a game, more than one way, which is like how do you beat someone who's willing to hold more cards in their hand? You stun the very few foundations that they play.
Yeah, and that's what, like I said, the sub theme that I wanted to do.
Right.
As well too. It's okay. I'm taxing your hand resources, and then when I can't tax your hand resources, I'm hitting your stage.
Yeah, I love the idea in my head of playing foundation destruction with discard, because the more you make someone discard, the more cards they hold, the less cards they build, the more effective your targeted destruction becomes. But I think the way that the game balance is and the symbol we're on, I think going for the stun package is definitely a way bigger deal, because stun grenade also gets really big. Like we're not even talking about the stun grenade numbers you can get with cards like Explosive Rebuke.
Yeah.
So, are you updating this as we go? Can I refresh yet?
Yeah, if you refresh, I'll tag along. I've got you.
Okay.
I've got the stream up and I've got you muted, so I can kind of follow along what's going on here.
Okay, well, I didn't make a copy. I didn't know if you were changing things as you went.
Okay, yeah. If you make a copy, that's great too.
Okay. I can do that so that way I can.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I
So
said, I really liked Genkai's guidance, but again, also it's a secret rare too, and it's a really good card. So I don't know what the availability of it's going to be like. So I wanted to have other type of stuff that plays along with what I was looking for. So the Mop Strike and the uh it's perfect for that. As I said, I know right off the bat, unless I pull, one off of a couple boxes and then a couple more go for sale, then
yeah,
maybe. But again, that's a big one.
I think what's really cool about Genkai's guidance is if your opponent is running some weird anti-discard card like recovery, or was it recovery time? And then I think there's like
Yeah.
one other card that matters when your rival makes you discard it. You can kind of suss those out. People will still probably be willing to discard those first, and you don't even have to attack. It's super costly to use 2 cards, but I mean, it's better than taking risk when there's nothing there. When it goes from like 3 cards to 5 cards all of a sudden, and
Yeah.
the math is like totally off. And the response is just absolutely clutch. Just so frustrating to. It's actually super frustrating to try and kill somebody through one Genkai's guidance and just get baited out at the very end. So I think expecting to have at least one in most decks on Symbol is probably smart.
Yeah.
Expect to have to play around it.
Yeah, because what I was playing in here, of course, before any of this has right now, the 3 of is avoiding conflict, and that card's been really good in the deck.
Okay.
But again, I'm trying to keep my actions at 3. 5 is kind of as far as for non-foundation attacks. I found 5, especially in my 6-hander without a ton of card draw, is where my sweet spot's been at so far.
Right. Okay. So we talked about focusing on sun going.
Yeah.
We're playing the 2 check out of 4. I think we're going maximum 2s, and we're gonna go super low on the curve, which means we're gonna have to pick like a handful of clutch two divs and run with that. If we look at I hate to keep harkening back to it, but it is the most recent event. It's not the end all be all, but the Endeavor deck I think played 2 different 2 diffs, and that's it.
Yeah, and then it was carried by the spam, which is another reason that attracted me to the death symbol. Death spam was already pretty good, but UU just takes it over the top.
Yeah, so they're replacing a lot of the similar ideas from powerful set 1 cards on higher difficulty. And so they're kind of making you
Yeah,
they're kind of making you just kind of pay more for it up front. So the fact that the spam is still really strong is nice, but the only thing I don't like about it is it is 2 blank ones in your stage. They are like meant to be blocked with, which causes me a little existential crisis, but considering how much we're going to chew up these foundations and destroy them, it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah, that was the thought process behind, like I said, adding all of them. 1, syndicate target, just because it was the 6 check. Nice to have those and running the 2s. And 2, it's easy target for something to be flipped by Explosive Rebuke or to be destroyed by interdimensional plants or Frightening Calm or whatever other destruction outlets that I have. The point was kind of have my stage be a bit fluid. So, after I'm done using whatever I can get the maximum benefit of it. Okay, now, I flipped this, now I can destroy this and build something else in its place that I can do. So
it should be. So I think that Mob Strike is basically going to take the place of Finger Daggers, because while the idea of encouraging my opponent to block is really nice, sending an attack 4 high for 5 or 6 damage, should still do that, and we can still put regular damage pumps on this attack.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that Finger Daggers is just not reliable enough at trying to do its job. Because really, the job is to draw the card.
Yep.
Stun Grenade is really nice in that it's also a momentum outlet. But I was going to ask about the blood evaluation because we're not ramping momentum. Momentum's not super guaranteed. And while we don't necessarily expect to OTK everybody, it just seems like a little costly when we're also playing a 3 difficulty asset that kind of gives us a similar effect, right? Like Ready 1 Foundation is stronger than +1 to the next check, but
yeah, it wasn't. It's a holdover from before I added to the deck. So
okay.
Interdimensional Plants. So yeah, that one can definitely go. I just never cut it out. I just wanted to. Originally, it was there, but once I tested out Interdimensional Plants and realized it was just it performed. It was doing what I was wanting to do pretty regularly. That's what I decided to roll with. If I was going to have a 3 diff, it was going to be the assets.
Yeah, we cannot. How do I put it? We can't rely on a lot of things when we're playing 2 checks. And so I think the first thing to do is look at the most unreliable cards and trim those. And then if we start seeing by playing the deck, if we start seeing, okay, maybe I do have a lot of momentum. Maybe people are waiting for the right block and they don't have many options because of this card plan. And so we are getting a bunch of real estate. That can always come back in later, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we're looking for momentum outlets, that's one of the best ones. Blood evaluation, absolutely high tier, massively high tier. Where does it see success in? Decks that cheated into play mostly. They're not even playing 2 checks.
Yeah.
So now I think here comes the absolute hardest part. I think we're looking at like 8 to 10 2 diffs at most.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your opinion from the ones that are on this list. I want to hear your opinion on the best ones, and I'm going to give you my opinion on the best. Okay. I want you to pick 2.
Just pick just 2?
You got to pick 2 to keep.
Probably Bring It On. Yeah. In Area Recon. And then like Learning to Harden as a 2B.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so we don't actually have to keep only 2 of them, but I wanted to pick out 2 to like max out, right? And so I think Bring It On is like an obvious keep. That is fair, but it's probably not one to like max out as a 4 of. I think the strongest 2 diff in this deck right now is Keiko's Aid.
Yeah.
I think Keiko's Aid is a baller card. It is so much stronger than Breaker 2, it's not funny. And the fact that you can rip this off on the first block, you can rip Keiko's Aids on the first block pretty reliably in this format. I don't expect to see too much like Blue Flame Immolation. We're probably not going to see a double jab pummel go crazy. And so this is actually going to be one of the few cards that can fight back against like early Twisting Azure Infernos. Things like that. I think Twisting Azure Inferno is going to be very popular with younger Toguro players and quite a few characters that just add 3 damage, right now, reliably.
Yeah.
So not needing actions to get Twisting Azure Inferno going is definitely something to watch out for. And you talked about winning those early game aggression battles. This is absolutely a card where you can keep like 1 foundation up, block 1 time, and this keeps you alive. Because you cannot play around it, right? It has to be on the next attack. It's not on an action or that. So I think Aerial Recon and Keiko's Aid are like your workhorse, consistent, always gonna have some value 2 diffs. Just because you discard cards from your card pool on your face, or you make your opponent discard cards from their hand on their face. When you discard cards from your card pool in tandem with readying foundations, we make up for the fact that we're basically not building anything. We're not cheating build. but you can make up for that in other ways.
Yeah.
And I still don't think we've seen a deck win a tournament that doesn't clear its card pool and ready foundations, except the what is it, the Toga deck that plays Alleyway Ambush, like the one that starts ignoring progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the Tokoyami decks were like finding ways to ready stuff when they were winning. It's crazy.
Yeah, Tokoyami is where I realized just how much -1 and +1 damage adds up.
Right. That was all of early MHA, and then it just became how many +3s can we play?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the Keiko Zaid. We're gonna bump that up just to see how much longer, how much more effective. Like how many times people attack you after a Keiko Zaid is gonna tell you a lot about your defensive structure, right? Like how hard you are to kill. Because if people are killing you through Keiko's Aid without canceling it, or without, just having massive check bonuses that stack up, like maybe an Ochako 4 can power through it, right? Because they can ready everything reliably after they hit you, but this is absolutely one of the best cards I've been playing since the Dark Tournament has been.
Yeah.
Sell me on Beneath the Armor.
That was just one of the original before some of these later cards got revealed. I was just adding stuff that had plus or minus damage on its face. Like I said, it's just a super expensive tight-lipped that essentially in my character it's flip +2 damage. But I feel like I have enough damage pump that I'd been able to cut, because like I said, by the time everything else was revealed, because Bowie was the first character revealed, but then I started seeing one diffs that was able, once TA's kit got revealed, I just said, okay, I have an easier access to +1 damage or damage pump. So
I'm gonna cut this one. I don't think it's got, because that is basically for Bowie to make sure all of his foundations are face down. Like that's all that really is. Then bring it on. Do you want to play 2 of this? I think this is a good 2 of. I think this is good
I've been playing it as a 2 of, and it's felt fine. I haven't wanted more of it when I seen it, and when I have it, it felt fine where it was at. So
because this works on the rival turn, which like this is, it's weird that this works on the rival's turn.
Yeah. And I have gotten that 1A enhance. I have been able to do it for like 4 damage.
Yeah.
And I have done it with both on face before too. So
yeah.
It's not often, but it is like one of those cool things that does happen with just the way that the deck works.
Yeah, once you get the rebukes rolling, it get pretty big. Mastermind's Apprentice. This one is so frustrating when it works, but it's kind of a weird one.
Again, it's when it works. I just was looking for some speed pump. Under Death, reliable speed pump, but I mean it's still not technically reliable because stun 1 to stop me from sending a 6-speed move. Essentially what would be a fake stun 1 almost. It worked when people check 3s. If somebody checked a 5, they almost always committed it. And I've, blown away I've removed a resource on a 50-50 shot, and it didn't pay off a lot.
Traditionally, them stunning the 1 is better overall. Them committing the 1 should be better overall. But yeah, we're strapped for 2 diffs specifically because our offense is coming so much from playing rabble rousing into rebukes. That should be our goal every game, is to open with rabble rousing, and then if we don't have a second rabble rousing, we start playing rebukes, and we can save our once per turn to discard anything when we need to. And just strip that hand with as much resources as we can, right? With as much conservation of our own resources, because once we get their hand, stripped out, or we have them stunned out, whichever path we have to take, that's when we can just start chewing up our stage for as much damage as. And at that point, Mastermind's Apprentice is like working against that because it's chewing up our stage to force early attacks. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not the best defensive enhance, especially if you don't have any kind of floating check penalty. But we do need to have some kind of speed hate, which is important. So learning to harden is kind of interesting because the death response to draw a card is a big deal.
Yeah.
But none of our attacks destroy it. And so far, none of our foundations except Frightening Calm destroys it. Oh, interdimensional plants can too.
Yeah, interdimensional plants can too.
I'm a little torn on this one. I think it should be the kind of card that you're willing to play a lot of or none. But it feels like it deserves a spot just because I don't see any other repeatable speed hate.
Yeah, and it's tough to find on this symbol too.
Yeah. Let's not use it for now, and then we'll see how often you need repeatable speed hate, because we do still have cards like Struggling with Studies, which is really strong, and we do still have a damage reduction sub theme. So hopefully being able to block won't be the most important thing, right? We still have Surviving the Final Witch. Spoiler, that one's going to go up to a 4 of, I think, pretty quick.
Yeah.
Let's cut it for now, but I think learning to harden is like the first thing to come back. That makes sense.
Yeah. I feel you. And plus, it was also in there as like that other draw. But now that we have instituted more card draw, into the deck.
Yeah, because the next one up is Nothing to See Here, which is fantastic speed hate if we print momentum. But
and that was the other thing with that one too. Yeah, it went fine when I was with the Destroy Foundation sub theme, but now that we have pivoted away from that, like I said, needing that momentum for the -3 speed, that was my repeatable speed hate, but it's not reliable.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is reusable, reliable, refundable. Commit costs are generally weaker for that reason. They get to be used every turn. I do think learning the standards has to be here, just because you are a 30 health 6-hander, and you do have little bits and bobs of damage reduction. So I think learning the standards also gets a lot of leeway with Keiko's Aid. It's kind of like your backup Keiko's Aid, right? Keiko's Aid is, if I want to block the first attack, the next one doesn't come. And learning the standards is, if I don't want to block the first attack, then the next one doesn't come, right?
Yeah, it's definitely in a weird spot in this lineup. I've cut it out the pre-rotation, just because I hadn't really ran into a lot of situations that I really wanted to see it. If anything, I actually wound up using it more for stopping assets being built.
Right.
Than the removing respawn.
This card absolutely dunks Mei Hatsume, and I don't know what it is, but every webcam tournament I play against the Mei Hatsume, and if I'm playing one of these symbols, it's just the easiest match. You just build learning and you just flip the babies. She never gets to draw a card. Crazy. So I think learning can easily be a 2 of, and it might be something that you go a bit higher on. I don't know how many cards are going to be building face-up resources, so putting this in a sideboard is probably high priority. This is a high priority sideboard card, right?
Yeah.
And again, don't forget the menaces of the former format. Overhaul was most represented at the HLC. He gets unflip tricks now with Cowboy Bebop cards. and his once per turn is difficult to sequence around learning the standards when you have a whole bunch of health and you're reducing the damage of that first attack or that second attack. So yeah, I think this is definitely one to play around with. Display of power. This one falls into the I'm not sure how reliable it is. And I'm not sure how effective it is. But I think you should definitely test this out early on.
Yeah, I think it might be worth. Yeah, I don't know. It was one of those. It's just like, okay, if we're playing the game, which means if this goes past turn 2,
Yeah.
then it's okay. But I just felt like if it, and I haven't had really chance to play test a ton, with the UU cards, but just on paper for me, it's not one of those early aggressive. You like, I'll build it because I need resources in order to play cards. But it's like I
Yeah.
wouldn't reap it unless we go to a late game, and I'm not trying to necessarily get there.
I think my biggest issue with it is I think I just value Red Right's the coolest more. And it's this
I love that card.
It's the same block, it's the same block zone, same difficulty, same control. Red Right's the coolest gives one less damage one time. But that one time you're gonna do it, it doesn't require you to commit the resource, it's already committed. And I think when you're going for game, you are going to be destroying things to Frightening Calm very often. And I think that having the resource to commit early and then pivot later, right? Because Red Right's the coolest. You can wait, you can commit it first. And if you get to a point where, you're halfway through the turn, you can play one or two more attacks. You can do the math at this point and go, okay, can I win or not? Red Right's the coolest is still there. Display of Power was almost definitely committed to pass a block early on in a game because you don't know where you're at yet. You don't know that you have that. And of course, early on in a game, it's also not inactive because each player has to have 6 or more. So if you're destroying your foundation with Frightening Calm, then Display of Power gets worse. So I'm kind of talking myself out of even trying it, but it's so much.
Cut it.
Got it? Okay. It's so much damage, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can trigger roughly the same amount of damage just by having a mic.
Yeah.
Snack times of 4. Red Right's the coolest. I think we're probably going to need low blocks at this. Maybe not.
I think mids is the issue I was having with the deck originally.
Oh yeah, struggling's a 4 of already. So let's go. We're at more. We're gonna have to trim the attack stat.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
I think at this point, I think what's gonna happen is we're putting a 4x next to everything that we really like, but we can sort of keep. At least this is my philosophy. Any math nerds out there can definitely correct me, but my philosophy is if everything's a 4x, we can trim everything to a 3x, and then see from there which one needs to go up, which one needs to go.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we're gonna put these down to 3s. I think Prideless Negotiations is just becoming Botan's coach.
Yeah, that could be too. Yes, I had the Breaker, but again, I didn't have Kiko's 8 as well too. Like I said, it's just one of those late reveal cards that I just kind of added to it shortly before we hopped on stream here. So.
Prideless Negotiations is not bad. It's just for the synergies that we get on Mob Strike and Bat Strike, and because we've also got, what is it? I thought we had one other card. Cared about your rival discard. Oh, Aerial Recon. Forcing Aerial Recon on the rival's turn is definitely a play that you're going to have to make at some point to stay alive. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
At some point, a rival is going to go, oh, wow, I didn't realize you could. I think we need to have 3 syndicate targets. The Reluctant Role Model we're going to keep as a 4 of. And then Surviving the Final, let me try this. 9 cards. Nice, but I think we're probably going to want to be a bit slimmer. I'm going to drop
Yeah.
1 interdimensional plants and 2 Genkai's guidance. Not because interdimensional plants is bad, but because we're probably really, really only going to want to see 1 of it, even though it's not unique. Which I think is kind of crazy. But with no ability to ramp it, I think early turn, it's like game 1, turn 1, going first, it's too much of a liability, even if you do successfully build it, because it's going to cause you to fail a foundation later. So even if you don't check a 2 while playing this one, you're going to build 1 less foundation because you're building an asset, and then you're going to build 1 less foundation if and when you do check poorly. So this is really a late game, destroy my foundations, stay away from deadlock kind of a value piece. So seeing it won't be as important. So we're only going to need 1 copy. Then Genkai's guidance is a little costly, and as good as it is, relying on having multiples of this is bad. And it's a card you're probably going to end up wanting to review more often, because form, remove, discard a card is sick, especially for this deck. But holding on to this and not drawing another attack, I think is going to be the wrong play most of the.
Yeah, and like I said, I've originally it's avoiding the conflict's been there.
Yeah, like if you draw a villainous waylay, it's a Genkai's guidance that deals 5 damage, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to have along with the other cards, but I think realistically, at least in the early days, 1 of is a realistic number.
Yeah.
I think that means we can drop. I think we can drop 1 stun grenade, 1 vial seizing. The high block situation is, and we do need to trim some attacks.
Yeah.
And more people are just willing to pay. Like if they play out their whole hand, they're not blocking the vial seizing. And if you're about to snack time them out of foundations, they're gonna pay for the vial seizing, right?
Yeah.
The vial seizing is probably, I would say, keep an eye on this card, play lots of games with it, and count the number of times you get to draw off of it. If it's not a high number, I genuinely think that you go back to 4 stun grenade in place of it, and probably play something else. Bump up a mop strike or something.
Okay.
Because this card has to be drawing us cards reliably to earn its spot. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah, because that's primarily what it's in for. I mean, the deadlock is a plus, but it's primarily there.
Yeah.
To be able to draw a card and hopefully force a block, since it'll have 6 damage base essentially.
Right, which it won't if our opponent says, "Well, I'm not blocking anyways." That's So, which I guess if you do get the -1s going, goes back up. So down to 64. We got to play at least a couple red rights of coolest after talking about. Sell me on
the glamour. That was just one of those, again, potential draw that was added long before stuff started getting revealed. But
yeah, this card is way too slow. There's decks for it, but it's not this one. Means our mid block situation does get worse. So
yeah.
Let's take a quick look at some mid block.
I think this is probably the first deck I've ever had where I've had issues with mid.
I've seen a few. I've definitely had a few. Cards of 4. I think Ending the Dream is cute. This seems like a deck that might want Ending the Dream, but I don't know. Becomes a liability really fast.
Yeah.
I can see why you don't have many mid blocks.
Yeah.
None of these are great. Seeing It All is surprisingly easy to trigger in your character. Yeah. The top card is the attack you just discarded for this one attack, you can one speed or one damage. The plus one mid though.
Yeah. That's another 4 check though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
How many of your attacks are ranged? None. Actually,
I don't think
none.
any.
Not a single one. Okay, so number 3 pro hero, not doing it. Fashion icon is. We talked about we didn't have a repeatable stun hate. Fashion icon is at least a reset.
It's a soft reset. I was running. Oh yeah, I was running 1x in the pre-rotation. I was running 1x of Desperate Struggle, but
okay, hear me out.
Diff.
You're gonna hate this idea. You're not wrong for hating it, but it's cute. You can play breakdancing once per turn, and then instead of flipping it, you can use Bakugo's once per turn to immediately discard it from the card pool. And it's a mid-breaker block. Also, if you expect to play against any Yoko Kurama, the Student Enhance does become additional hate. And you know Kurama's popular. I don't know how good that deck's going to be, but you know there's fanboys and fangirls who are going to play Kurama.
Yes. And I will tell you that I have looked at this card, and I thought about it as a potential sideboard option.
It sounds gimmicky, but I don't know. I kind of like it the more I think about it as a do both of your once per turns for a free -2, and then it becomes, you know, with a copy of something like Irritated out, you can make your early pokes like untouchable, right? Because you can play your first attack, use Irritated on it. It gets effectively 2/2, which is nuts for a 1 div.
For a 1 div, yep.
And then you use Breakdancing for another 2 speed, and then you use the once per turn to make them discard a card and get rid of that the card pool clog, and you still have access to that Breakdancing for later turns. It might be the piece that you're missing to make this deck play at the speed you want.
Very well could be. If so, how many are we running? 2 of these?
I think 2 to 3. Let's try out 3 because we need the block zone. I think it's going to bring us back to a bloated territory. Yeah. Let's trim down the Keikosades and the Recons just because fair is fair.
Yeah, 3. That puts us at 65 now, I think.
Yeah, still low on mid blocks, but this isn't a deck that's playing to block a whole lot. So,
no, it's not. Usually I was thinking as long as I had anywhere between like 15 to 17 mid blocks, I was going to be okay.
Also, because of struggling with studies, you will have redundancy on your block zones more often than not. So as long as you see one, which we've got Mop Strike in here now, see them more often. I think you'll be in a good spot. I think the only thing from here is got Irritated as a 4 of Botan's coaching. Bring that down to a 3 of with everything else. Just because it's not like a guaranteed bonus effect, right? It's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Good effect. We're down to 64 or mid. Which one of these? Aerial Recon was one of our mid blocks. Let's go back up to 4 just because it's a mid block. And it is super strong. Like, I think looking at your opponent's hand, this easily for this deck is going to be huge. Because it's going to tell you what zones to hold. And your opponent is probably, most opponents are probably not going to have the read on that. That make, like, if you look at their hand and you see like 3 attacks and a non-attack, and you've played 1 attack, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to hold the 3 block zones plus 1 more card and build one after
and it
that.
guarantees that the Waylay snipes a card for sure too.
Right, true. I didn't even get to that. I didn't even think of that. So, you know, having the right block zone call on Waylay is a big deal. Yeah, this one's going to stay as a 4 of. And I think with 21 attacks and having a varied approach is gonna benefit us, because you still don't have a lot of raw card draw, and you definitely don't have form speed card draw. I really thought we could get this closer. I guess also it's not as important. I'm still like in my hero brain where having like a slim 50 is a big deal. But having gone to
Yeah.
60 cards, I don't think it's as big of a deal.
I will tell you with the oh, your mic cut out.
Oh, uh,
Oh, there we go. You're back.
okay. I was
Um,
saying I don't think that having a slim 60 is as important as having a 50 card deck because the ratios of cards you can, you still have a maximum of 4 copies card.
yeah.
So,
And I will tell you with the current deck that I have with the current build that I'm playing now with this deck, 65 doesn't, well, 64 is what I was playing. 64 doesn't feel sluggish at all.
okay. Cool.
So
So then I'm gonna take one more scan just to see if there's anything that might have. Oh, okay. So one thing to look at in the future is Confession. Confession combos really well in Deadlock with Aerial Recon, but it also revs up your Mop Strike, Bat Strike kind of a thing, right? It's
yeah,
another
this is
card
not the
that
first deck you've tried to sell me on this card.
it's a solid one of, and I was sold on that by Tim Keefe. So there's so many. I'm telling you, there's so many people. I'm guilty of this. Who want to go down to like exactly one card, or they have like, the last card they play is an Airy Smiles or something like that. So just having like free non-committal ways, it doesn't cost you anything. It's just a first in hands to potentially snipe cards like that does have more value the more that they print better hand traps.
Yeah.
In the past, and I've never asked Tim Keefe about this, but in my heart of hearts, I truly believe that the real reason he was trying to run Confession is so after an Eraserhead does their -2 speed enhance, he can snipe the erase out of their hand. Can't pick it back up that.
Right.
I truly believe that in my heart that he was willing to run that gambit just to, I don't know for sure. I think there's a lot of cards that unfortunately you think about the kind of value that they can have, but you have to look at the value that they're going to give you every time. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how competition works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything obvious that we're missing. We're down that one card. I guess those are all mid.
Forbidden.
Yeah. So what I'm looking at here, I can share this. I want your opinions.
Yeah.
Because it's not, because the whole point of this, right, is not to like transform the deck into something totally different. Like, here's the best Bakugo 4 list. Here's, Bakugo 4 in a can. Everyone go play this list. I want to help you refine your list.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. The current iteration of this, I was running Battle Arena, so that was helping with the momentum production.
Okay. I like Battle Arena a lot because I'm a sucker for cards that count as 2, and having like that bonus to a check.
Yeah.
But I think with the premium that we're at for difficulty, I don't know if it really, like, I don't know if making a 2 check into a 4 check is as important,
Yeah.
It's just kind of in a weird spot.
It was one of those, the response was actually like the added bonus. It legit primarily was in there for the I've dealt the damage, let me add momentum.
Okay.
So that I had it for like nothing to see here, so I could reliably use that. And then potentially had the interdimensional plants as well for that +3 damage, +1 health.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I think you've got good enough momentum outlets for what you're naturally gonna get. And like going into extra stuff like that, like with the blood evaluation, I think it's just gonna dilute the potency of the deck.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to primarily focus on as well too. Because like I said, without set 1 cards now, Well, at least on paper, it seems that I would just struggle to get some real good consistency early turn.
Yeah,
Um,
because you've got a really nice blend of like good momentum outlets, solid, not over the top. Explosive rebuke, powerful three once you flip is solid, and that's really strong for a discard deck. Stun grenades got some on there, so the interdimensional plants, of course, still there. So like, there's still good ways to use it, and you don't have anything that requires it, because that's always a big linchpin. Is once your attack lineup requires momentum, that's when it becomes really shaky, right? That's when you need to
yeah,
have tutors for it into Amajiki, stuff like that. So I think being okay with never having momentum and then having cards that are a bonus with it is way better than having like this whole other secret synergy part of our deck that sometimes never comes together.
yeah.
So 65 cards, 21 attacks. It's a little less than a third. Fairly aggressive. Excuse me, but nothing crazy. Not as crazy. Not the craziest we've seen. Um, we've seen some wild percentages out there.
Oh yeah, I think Nick's was like what 37 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot. He gets Endeavor gets to play weird with his ratios though because of the amount that he mills and the amount that he draws. Right, like throws off normal consistency math. So
Yeah, 36.6 is what it was. Repeating.
repeating, of course. So the only thing I think we're really missing at this point is don't have reliable, repeatable
Speed hate.
card draw. No, card draw.
Yeah,
We do
yeah,
have
card draw.
we do kind of have repeatable speed hate and breakdancing, but sorta, very sorta. Um, let me see.
And that's what I'm saying. So with the if since we dropped it to a one of, would the Genkai's guidance still be worth it, you think, or do I just add that avoiding the conflict back in there? Um,
Well, avoiding the conflict doesn't actually draw you a card. It replaces itself.
I mean, it replaces, yeah.
Yeah, which if we're replacing a +1 mid block, we're in trouble. That's how I feel. That's my personal feelings on that. Let me see. We had the Taguro settling old debts. Thing for me costs some momentum. Dangerous Combatant is close because we are kind of leaning into a stun sub theme, which I fully expect this deck to go back to playing like 4 Snack Time and 4 Frightening Calm and just stripping out, other things, right? Like at some point you're gonna see like what's working and like focus more towards that.
yeah.
Learning to Harden is probably gonna be the first card that you put back into the
Yeah, it's like I said, it's sucks it's commit for -2 speed, but again,
yeah. It I wanna believe breakdancing can do this work, but I'm not super sold yet. And so those might
yeah,
have to become
it's only once per turn though, too. Breakdancing.
right. No, that's true.
Yeah.
But you can get a lot of mileage out of using the breakdancing, flipping it to discard the face down, discarding your next block, blocking the third attack, using struggling on the third attack before you even discard with Bakugo, right? Like
Yeah.
you do
Yeah,
have
there's
some
there.
you do have some moves on defense. You're not like help.
Yeah.
The
No,
main
that's why I just wanted different enough there. But it's also a +2. So I mean, if breakdancing doesn't work or I feel like I want learning to harden back in, then it's a bit of a better block mod, and I've got my repeatable, and then the nice side of being able to blow it up and then draw a card.
yeah,
Interdimensional plant means I get to draw 2 with it.
it's just when this card was shining, it was in a 50 card deck that had 4 copies of brute strength.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
so we frightening calm should fit that role, but it's not quite the same.
It would be the dream if it fits that role, but
Yeah. You really are strapped for raw one. How do you feel about settling old debts?
I was wanting to try it when I
Yeah.
finally seen it revealed. I was wanting to try it.
Yeah,
Um,
there's just gotta be something that like pluses you a card in here before deadline.
yeah,
Think
because like I said, settling old depths. I mean, there's a ton of flip draw, but again, like I said, it's that 6 or more. So hopefully, it's like, all right, on turn 2, this is live, type of deal. Uh,
yeah.
Again, though, it's not quote unquote reliable because I can't reliably flip this on turn 1 or turn 2.
Yeah, that's
It's a
true.
little
None
hard.
it's tough. The None of the flip draw cards have been the most reliable, which is fine, but this one is especially tough. Um so to be fair, one thing I should note is Botan's coaching, if you have no cards in hand, can draw you a card.
Oh, because it's not cost.
It's not a cost to discard. So there's going to be quite a few games where you're going to hold one, block the first one, use your once per turn, use Botans, try to get, just a second block to stay alive. And it's also a really common way. So one of the reasons the older version got turned into a flip cost was because people were using it that way. They were going to 0 cards in hand with 4 copies of the old Botan Foundation. I forget what it's called.
Mhm.
It's called like I can't remember. The I really should too because it was a super staple on its symbol because you would go down to 0 and it was just better for you to draw a card and you didn't care if your opponent got to cycle one. It was like half the time it was worse for them, just like petty squabbles. So.
Right.
Voice of Reason, that's the one, yeah. So Voice of Reason used to be once per turn you could do that, and you would get 4 copies out. So once per turn you can draw 4 cards. You would just have to keep blocking or discarding with the card that you
Nuts. But yeah, just looking over the deck list, like I said, I'm happy with it here. The only thing that I'm probably like kind of iffy on, I said, is the breakdancing that's replacing
yeah.
for learning the harden, but no.
Look, Learning to Harden is probably a better card overall. I'm just worried that you synergize better with breakdancing than Learning to Harden.
Yeah, because of I don't know. Like I said, it'd definitely be worth the try. But at least I know if it's not working, I already have a replacement for that slot.
Correct, because Learning to Harden is just super, super solid, and even if you don't get to destroy it as a discard deck, having the ability to, have multiple copies of that out, and your opponent says, okay, well, he has it, right? Like if your opponent's at like 15 health, and you can add 6 to 9 damage from your stage, you're telling them like, hey, I only have to draw 1 attack. So I think that having the damage pump on Learning to Harden might end up being the reason why. Because of the +2 speed on breakdancing only really matters when you're poking. Or, if your opponent if you're playing like a long string and your opponent still has blocks in their hand by the end of it, like, hopefully they're stunned out and the speed won't matter. But I do also think that breakdancing is good into a format where people are going to play Yoko Kurama too. So maybe it'll be really matchup dependent because I've been playing against a lot of Yoko Kurama.
Yeah.
Like I'm playing against like Amajiki, Younger Toguro, and Yoko Kurama like exclusively. So I've played like maybe 12 matches and it's like 4 of each.
Right. Yeah. No,
So
I plan on Barco 4 and Hiei is probably the ones I'll be putting all the work in for this set here.
got some set 1 cards in this. Yeah. I am not going to touch the sideboard for this just because I think that it's obvious that sideboarding is going to be, based on things that you struggle with once you actually start playing games. But how do you feel about the deck right now?
Yeah, like I said, it's fitting what I was wanting in my head. Now better because I said I just wanted some of that board interaction. Uh, is what I was wanting. Like I said, I haven't had a ton of luck me myself personally with you just going like full aggro one way or another. I found like that mix of kind of like playing when I was playing Ochako 2,
Hmm.
having that aggro but having just that tiny bit of, interaction as a five-hander. Um but again, just felt like being able to kind of have that flex in a sense because for the ones that I go against that can kind of counter the discard, I still need to be able to have a way to you know win the game.
Right. And
Yeah.
you've played a bunch of latent skill decks in the past, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is gonna hit a lot of the same like neurons, like a lot of the same niches, where you're not gonna be like overwhelming your opponent in resources, but you are gonna be able to discard and draw effectively enough most of the time to see key pieces that you need and like set up for the turn three. I think turn three is gonna be your sweet spot. I think that's the sweet spot for most decks realistically anyways. And I think that Mop Strike and Learning to Harden are probably going to be the cards that you're going to want to look to bring in the most. Mop Strike's also a +1 mid block, so definitely keep track of how much work Vile Seizing does for you. Vile Seizing is more damage, and it does present a deadlock and a breaker and like all this stuff that is better than Mop Strike. But for deck consistency purposes, there's definitely a chance that we're better off having the lower damage, draw more cards option.
I can tell you right now, we're playing 8-2 checks. I'm definitely valuing consistency more over
Right?
the conditional maybe.
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to be throwing away two diffs just to look for ones and right, like,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I think you talked about the concept being use early aggression, disrupt my opponent's sculpt is where we kind of landed on that early aggression. You wanted to have
Yeah.
a low zone threat. You want to have scaling. That's where our bat strike comes in. So we've been able to add that. And then we do have some defensive tricks. We've got a little bit of card pool. Our character does the card pool clearing, so now we've got some foundation readying. We've got a lot of really cool synergies in this deck. The only thing I have left to really ask you is, do you think that this deck is missing anything at this point?
You cut out. I didn't hear. I
Okay.
got the deck missing, and then you cut out from there.
Is there anything that you think this deck is missing? We talked about like repeatable speed hate, right? So speed blocking is maybe gonna be an issue, but we do have surviving the final, which is surprisingly useful. We've got cards that are usable while committed, right? Like Reluctant Role Model and Aerial Recon.
Yeah. Then I also have 30 health as well. I
True.
just was, I don't know. Typically with my characters, I like to be able to, if I need to, be able to reliably at least block 2 attacks. Um, a turn
Okay.
because with 30 health, I kind of want to leverage that a little bit. Kind of like just have the five-handers mentality with it, except like I said, I had the ability to block 2 fairly easy because I can use Bakugos once per turn on my rival's turn as well. Uh,
Okay.
so it's not super important that I have the speed hate per se, because unless somebody's got like pumping it to the nines, like blocking on a 6 or 7, I think should be fairly easy to do with the deck.
Okay. So
I am going to go ahead and drop the Vile Seasons and bump Mop Strike up to 4. Because again, like I said, I just value the consistency.
okay.
And 2, I really need the card draw to get going. 1, not only just for maybe finding attacks, but 2, finding those spams or things that are really going to make that stage rock.
Right. And again, as a poke, I can't stress how good Mob Strike is by itself at just fixing your hand and disrupting your opponents if it's the only attack you're gonna play.
Yeah.
And then you know what Desperation 3 means, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It means once I'm
Uh,
below half health. So once I hit 14, it's a 3 death.
14, yep. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's going to be pretty useful too, I bet. You don't have any way to pay life, which I wouldn't go out of my way to do, but I do want to give you a list of cards to potentially consider. Right, we talked about learning to harden, and we talked about bumping up copies of Snack Time and Frightening Calm, right, to kind of go full in on
Yeah.
that strategy if it's working out. Because right now in the early stages, you got to play with a bunch of different cards to see which ones are working and which ones aren't. And we take out, obviously we take out the ones that aren't, and we add in more copies of the ones that we go, man, if I had a second Snack Time, which Snack Time is rough because I think you are. My only real fear for you is you're gonna struggle to pay for the Snack Time when you don't have Explosive Rebuke in your hand. Um, just because you don't have that much card draw. So having those extra mob strikes is probably gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
But so I want you to keep in mind learning to harden. Keep in mind Weapon Clash. Weapon Clash is a 2 diff that for you on Fury attacks, and I think you have it in the side already, but
Yeah, I do.
yeah, it counts as your self-sacrifice. You destroy a face down, which, not the hardest thing to do, but also not super reliable necessarily. But it combines with Reluctant Role Model, right? It combines with if you have to red right's the coolest. Oh no, that says this attack. That's rough.
Yeah.
You got enough flip costs in general, though, right? So you've got Botan's coaching, breakdancing, things like that. So once you're in a pinch, you've already used those resources. You've already probably used struggling with studies at this point. So you can destroy it for -2, which for you is plus. And then when you're going for game, you can flip it to build an additional resource, which is something that previously your deck didn't really have access to. So I think that one might be like sneaky good. Maybe it's not
Yeah.
sneaky good, but like it seems underwhelming the first time I read it. But then once I play against decks playing Weapon Clash, I'm like, oh, this is a struggle. Like -2 damage on everything just to keep themselves alive is, fairly decent. So you have the added benefit, of course, of using it offensively.
Yeah.
The one other foundation number lock was not activated. The other foundation that I think is potentially going to come into play here is Arrogant Fighter. So this one I think flies under the radar because the actual effect of it is mill one, which doesn't mean anything for your deck. But having the ability to seal a rival foundation after it gets destroyed gives you access to a level of control that is, I think, kind of understated. Again, this one's kind of a fever dream, and this comes in if you add in a card like Learning to Harden, you're probably going to want to add in the Karasu 2 diff. I can't remember what it's called right now. But the one that you destroy for +1, and then Immortal Shapeshifter, right? So if you do end up adding Immortal Shapeshifter, I would take a look at Arrogant Fighter, because being able to seal a foundation kind of, I'm going to use the term ambiguously, right? Like if you have a foundation in your stage that says seal a rival foundation when you use it, it's very obvious to your opponent that like this is a play that you can make and you will. But if you have that card committed on your side of the board and it's not playable while committed, it's very sneaky, right? It's very strong in that respect. So
Yeah.
I think that that's something to look at, because you talked about wanting to touch rival foundations, and right now you don't actually have a way to deal with stun hate.
No.
So without any target commit, without something, to flip a stun hate card, I think you might look at a card like that, just because it's so weird. It's such a weird, like, out of the way thing. But as a 1 diff that stops your opponent from stacking your deck, which is going to be slightly more annoying. It's going to be more scarce, but it's still going to be like a really annoying thing. You're gonna have access to stuff like that, and then you're gonna have the ability to synergize with it to steal cards, and it's not a played ability, so your opponent can't cancel it.
Oh yeah. Okay, I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
on the arrogant fighter. So like I'm saying, like when I say it's sneaky, I mean it is a continuous ability that happens when your opponent destroys it. So if they play like a your rival destroys a foundation you pick, like the Karasu static, you know, and a lot of his cards just have like your rival destroys one. You get to pick this one, and then all of a sudden you seal their best foundation. You seal their immortal shapeshifter. Um, Being able to seal immortal shapeshifters is probably going to be like a potent thing too. So there is, I think it's seal of approval. There's the Night Eye Foundation that says once your opponent plays an ability on a foundation, seal all copies of it. That's also a solid sideboard card, I think, going into this next format. And then the other card I want you to look at.
So yeah, that is seal of approval.
Yeah, seal of approval.
Yeah.
And then I want you to look at Genkai's training. That's the last one. Genkai's training gives all of your attacks, like with your character's face on it, like that +0 block mod. So for rabble rousing, it makes it a 1-diff commit for -2 speed, and then you can spend a momentum to ready it. And it's not real speed, so your opponent can't use a reset on it. It's messing with a block modifier. And people are going to be playing the Echo plus to block modifiers ability.
Yeah.
I think it's Spirit Gun. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you the entire attack lineup is eligible under Genkai's training.
Oh yeah, you have air.
That we have.
You have air.
Yeah,
that's true.
I have air, death, and void. So literally every attack in my lineup is covered under Genkai's training.
Granted, you have really good block mods already, which is why I don't think it's like the biggest deal. But unlike Determined, it counts all cards. So interdimensional plants, you don't share 2 with. But Genkai's training becomes a 0. Genkai's guidance, sorry. Genkai's guidance becomes a +0 low.
Yeah.
Was it Botan's coaching becomes a +0 mid, right? Where's the other one? Learning the standards. Like so many cards in this deck actually qualify for this. Red Ride's the coolest would qualify. So that might dictate. Irritated becomes a 0 high block. Yeah, so that might dictate how you build the deck and sculpt around it, because if you can reliably take, you know, -2 off of almost every block that you do and be able to ready this as a foundation offensively or defensively, you know, giving you, we talked about Aerial Recon getting bumped up to like a 3 of or a 4 of because of that ability to ready itself. This is another great momentum outlet. So
yeah, that, and it is quote unquote covers the issue of not having the repeatable speed hate. You know, if I just decrease my block modifier.
Right. And then what's the, I think it's double Spirit Blast. What's the Spirit Gun double?
It's double Spirit Blast, I think is what it is.
Double Spirit Blast, yeah. So I expect double Spirit Blast to be like a whole archetype. Like I'm not joking. Like this is gonna be a card that makes decks work, because you echo it and get the +2 to the block mods. A lot of decks can't hang with that. How do you solve it? You're gonna solve it with Genkai's guidance, and all of a sudden the double Spirit Blast decks are probably not playing a lot of actual speed pump, you know? And so they'll fall victim to Genkai's guidance, not only getting rid of your natural block modifier, but getting rid of the double Spirit Blast. So similar to the One with Nature issue where there was nothing to counter block mod pumping, we now have some pretty good answers on some low-cost foundations. So definitely I expect to see...
play in Vash.
What's up?
I said that might be a great card to play in Vash.
Yes, true. It's a great card in a lot of decks. I was like a staple, at least a 1-up. In almost every deck I played in the original formats it was legal in. So that should tell you something right there. So the attacks I expect to see the most, right, are a lot of the 4 high for 4 draw card attacks. Like there's the Armor of the Wolf, I think it is. Whichever one is the armor card that's 4 high for 4, and you flip a foundation to draw a card, and then it gives itself damage. So it's gonna be a 4 high for 8.
Yeah, I think it's the Phoenix one.
Yeah, whichever one it is, it's a 4 high for 8 like half the time, and then people put more damage on it, right? So relying on your damage reduction to like prevent pokes, probably not going to be a super relevant strategy, but relying on it to prevent exact lethal from late strings after you've used Keiko's Aid and potentially Genkai's training. I don't know how valuable Genkai's training is if you're not blocking more than 2 times in a turn, which with 30 health and damage reduction, you'd like to think that, and even Genkai's guidance, right? If we get a couple copies of that going, like it's not going to be super important, but I did want to mention it because that is absolutely a phenomenal card that got a reprint, and I haven't seen it talked about enough.
Right. Yeah, it'll definitely be on my radar then, especially like I said, since majority it seems like of the deck, it affects.
Yeah, I do think you are going to be a little reliant on seeing these rabble rousings, and I think you're going to be a little reliant on playing turns where you have 2 of them, where you go rabble rousing once per turn, and then hopefully have at least 1 explosive rebuke. Because unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to discard rabble. I don't think you have a way to discard cards from your card pool except for explosive rebuke and your character. Like death just doesn't have encouragement anymore, and that was basically it.
Yeah.
So there's like 1 or 2 ways maybe to get it like into momentum, but we're focused on Fury stuff. So yeah, I think we got everything covered. I think we've got some speed hate, we've got breaker to our mods, we've got the ability to ready foundations, we even have the ability to look at the rival's hand, we've got defense for when we don't block, we've got defense to recur our blocks, you've got an unparalleled amount of cycling. Well, maybe not unparalleled, but you've got a pretty good amount of discard and draw.
Yeah, Botan being reprinted essentially in her foundations and attacks is huge.
Yeah, and then we shored up the Bat Strike. I think Bat Strike's going to overperform. I don't think you can play more than like, you can maybe play a third, but I think you're never going to want to play more than 1 or 2 in a turn anyways. But I think it's going to overperform when you do.
That would be the dream.
I think you can reliably get 8 damage out of it.
There was yeah, and I don't have to check hack anymore. I remember because I was just like I was running keeping beat, but
right,
not check hack, but boost my hacks. But I definitely rather have aerial recon in that 4 check spot. 2-4 check spot than keeping beat right now.
I think the thing I like the most about aerial recon is even if you never get to ready it, you know, if you start your turn, because I think before it felt like you had to start with villainous waylays unless explicitly you have like 1 rabble rousing, and I think that was always kind of a big conflict for this deck. I think now that aerial recon is going to give you guaranteed snipes with waylay and basically be redundant with like the secondary effect of revealing their hand, right? I think this actually solves a lot of the clunkiness, because I know when I play against waylay decks, if they don't play the waylay first, it always feels worse. You know, it always feels like I would have been in a worse spot if they just played the waylay first and called the right zone. But because of the way that your damage pump works and the way that you want to discard rabble rousing with your once per turn, I think that having stuff like aerial recon makes mop strike and rabble rousing and stun grenade even look like a lot better openers, and it gives you a better way, or at least a different way to play villainous waylay than it had, you know, than it basically had to be played in the past.
Right.
Other than that, I think we're pretty much done here. We've actually been at this for 2 hours, a little bit longer than I thought, but I think this deck is super interesting. There's so many little pieces to it.
Yeah. So I said I had the theme there. I just needed to get it cohese. So
Right, and
um
it's card evaluation in this game is super tough.
that it is.
It's very, very difficult. Well, I hope that this works out for you, my man. You have any plans that you're going to be able to play at a local soon? I know you're kind of far off from one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, right now it's been WWWs and Unfun Fridays. So um yeah, that's kind of been the only way I've been able to play here as of late. So hopefully once the Dart tournament, once the set actually drops, we'll see if some other stuff picks up here and hopefully we can go from there.
Gotcha. Well, if you want to try this out on TTS, I'm going to take a small little break, but then I'm going to come back refreshed, rejuvenated. I'm going to play some viewer games on TTS. So if you want to give it a shot, I'm about to open up the queue.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably grab myself a bite to eat, maybe a drink or something, and see where you're at by the time I get back.
Awesome. Will do. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped. And I hope, we get to do this again in the future.
Yeah, tremendously. I'm even now more excited to play this deck.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll see you next time.
All right. See ya.
Peace.